Welcome to today's Dharma talk, and I've entitled the talk "Taking Refuge in Right View." So, in this talk, I'll focus on right view and how it can be a refuge in our daily lives, as well as a key factor in the realization of the peace of awakening. And when I was thinking about the topic for today's talk, I wondered what was relevant for me and perhaps other people right now. And I came up with the idea that what is relevant right now is, for a lot of people, a lot of the world actually, is the current conflict we are seeing in the world. There's so many views abound, and there's so much conflict and battle over things. I thought that it would be relevant to talk about a refuge of right view. And the other thing I was thinking about that is relevant for me, and I'm assuming others, is this also the matter of aging, sickness, and death. The matter that we're all in dukkha, and that it'd be wonderful to find some freedom. It's possible to find the realization of complete awakening. And hi, Jeff. Oh, hi, Greg, sorry. So, what are views? Well, views include opinions, beliefs, values, theories, and philosophies. And in my view, I also like to include insights in views. I like to see our awakening insights as a view, like a perspective on seeing things. So everyone has views on everything, actually. And have you ever noticed that when we think that the views we hold are right, and that, well, have you ever noticed that we think that the views we hold are right views? And if someone's holding a view that's counter to our view, they are holding a wrong view. You see it all the time. And many people hold their views so strongly that they're willing to kill or eliminate or get rid of the other who holds a view that is, according to them, a wrong view. So in a sutta called I'll get it right, Sabba Asava Sutta, or all of the fermentations, that's what it translates as. Asavas are fermentations. Asavas are like fermentations. They're like things that arise, things that are patterns that arise that are like kilesa, like defilements. Anyway, in the sutta, the Buddha spoke about views that people hold about themselves or the self as a thicket of views, a wilderness of views, a contortion of views, a writhing of views, a fetter of views. Bound by a fetter of views, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person is not freed from birth, aging, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair. He is not freed, or he, she, or they are not freed, I tell you, from suffering and stress. In other words, they're not free from dukkha. So, what's right view? What is right view? Well, it's not just the ones we hold, of course, but right view, according to Buddhism, is traditionally the first factor on the Noble Eightfold Path, which in the context of the Four Truths, of course, are the first truth is the reality of dukkha, the reality of unsatisfactoriness. Second truth is the reality of the origins of dukkha. The third truth is the reality of freedom from dukkha. And the fourth truth is usually the path of freedom from dukkha, the path to freedom from dukkha, or the path of freedom from dukkha. And the fourth truth is traditionally understood as the Eightfold Path. So according to some scholars, the path has two levels, ennobling and noble. And the first fundamental or ennobling level leads to the alleviation of dukkha. And usually what I say is that this first level may not necessarily have an experience of nibbana, the experience of complete awakening. However, it's leading to that. It's leading to that. It's leading to an alleviation of the severity of dukkha. And in my opinion, or my view, most contemporary psychotherapies utilize strategies consistent with this ennobling Eightfold Path. And when the ennobling Eightfold Path has been traveled and there is some alleviation of dukkha with some stress reduction, the conditions for the realization of nibbana are more likely. With even just a glimpse of nibbana, major psychological transformations occur and a more refined and noble level of the path can be followed and lived, leading to complete awakening. And as I said just a moment ago, I think that this noble level implies that we have the realization of nibbana. So the Buddha's Eightfold Path is divided into three basic trainings, and these are wisdom, ethics, and meditation, or cultivation. Sometimes it's called cultivation. Meditation is called cultivation. And the wisdom component has two factors: right understanding, view, or conceptualization. Sometimes it's called conceptualization. Sometimes it's called understanding. Sometimes it's called right view. And the second factor of the wisdom component is right intention or resolve or thought or vision, sometimes it's called. And then the second component is ethics or lifestyle. And this involves right action, right speech, right livelihood or upkeep. And meditation, the meditation component involves right effort or energy, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So each factor on this path begins with the term right. It actually that's translation of the word samma, and in different ways, the understanding of samma, the Pali word samma, could be understood as complete, authentic, fully, skillful, appropriate, or correct. And yet another way of understanding samma is, as I read in this wonderful book by Ajahn Jayasaro, The Life and Teachings of Ajahn Chah, it's defined as in harmony with the way things are. So samma, or right here, means it's going in the right direction versus the wrong direction. That's simply a way of understanding it as well. So each of these factors of the Eightfold Path support each other. They work together, and it's comparable to the intertwining strands of a single cable that requires the contributions of all the strands for maximum strength. And that's a quote from Bhikkhu Bodhi. So, and often it's depicted as a wheel with spokes, with 8 spokes. And if you can imagine that each spoke contributes to that turning of the wheel, so that it's it's rolling smoothly, then you can understand that each factor on the Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration is equally important on the path to waking up. So at a basic ennobling level, this right view or right understanding is the understanding that actions have consequences, that unhelpful actions often lead to things not working out for the best. And right view leads to making skillful decisions. and commitments to act in ways that are harmless, kind, and liberating. In other words, right intentions. And when one lives in a manner that is wise, with right speech, right action, right livelihood, in other words, actions that are skillful, actions that are kind, actions that are inclining towards awakening, speech that is the same, and livelihood or upkeep that is the same, then there's a level of mental composure that provides us with the capacity to meditate, to cultivate our minds, which leads on to the third component, which is meditation. So this leads us on to looking at ourselves honestly, with energy. Often it's described as courageous effort because it takes a lot of courage to look at ourselves, to see ourselves honestly, completely as we are, to not be deceived by our kilesa, to be deceived by the taints or the asavas or the the fermentations, the outflows that kind of pollute our mind. So to see clearly, it takes a lot of courage to begin to do that. And the combination of effort, this courageous effort, remembering to be attentive or mindfulness, and seeing deeply with focused attention gives rise to understanding. And when understanding arises, we're kind of going in a circle here, you might notice. When understanding arises, this leads to right intentions, right actions, and the path of liberation continues. In essence, the 8-factor pathway describes a process for changing or releasing unhelpful habits and behaviors and developing instead what is helpful to reach desired goals that are beneficial for self and other. So mostly I'm talking about the ennobling eightfold path there, this path of us helping us live in life in a helpful way. You could say it in a therapeutic way, but it's more like a helpful way that leads to more profound awakenings. So right views are those that correspond to reality. Right view, as I mentioned, is the first factor on the path and the first aspect of wisdom. And when we have a clear perspective on where to go, it is, sorry, I'll just say that again. Without a clear perspective on where to go, it's easy to get lost. That is, when we begin to make right decisions, to act in a way that avoids harm and helps us see clearly, which circles back to shape our attitudes and our beliefs and so on, the ways we think and further decisions about our life. With clear view, one's perception of things is no longer distorted by ideas that are unhelpful, and we make wise decisions. One fundamental distortion, according to the Buddhist discourses, is the views that things are permanent, that they are independent, and that they are able to be controlled. Another distorted view is the belief that actions do not have consequences and that we can behave unethically without an outcome. And these are the ideas of wrong view. Wrong view is taking permanent something that isn't permanent, taking something to be a source of enduring happiness that's not possible to give a source of enduring happiness, taking something to be self that's not self, and believing that we can get away with murder, basically. I'm being figurative there, but also literal. The the fact that we can get away and do harmful actions and there be no consequences. That is wrong view. Because this is kind of this idea of actions. Well, in Pali, the term for actions is karma. Karma literally means actions, and our actions are the only thing we can take with us when we die. Everything else disappears. Our actions are the ground we stand on. It's according to Thich Nhat Hanh. He talks about actions as our only possessions. Everything else changes. Everything else goes. Especially when we die, we can't take anything with us except we're propelled by our karma, by our actions. We are propelled into whatever there is. If there is an afterlife, we're propelled into that, holding only our actions, like by our actions. Our actions are our only possessions. Our actions are the ground we stand on. So we'll lose everything. When we die, everything goes. Even our ideas of self, our everything. I can't take anything with me except that. So it's a really good understanding. People who have wrong view, well, most of us have wrong view anyway. We're mostly thinking that we're going to last. We're mostly thinking that we're independent. We don't depend on. We're not an interdependent condition, and we mostly take personally everything that's going around us. So it's this. We're mostly influenced by a wrong view. So holding this wrong view means that individuals do not see that the way they behave in the world has an impact. And at a more subtle level, this view means that that people do not see how everything is somehow or other connected to everything else, and that what we do in the world affects others and the environment around us. So essentially, wrong view is about not understanding karma, which as I mentioned earlier, literally refers to our actions. So at the noble level, right view refers to seeing the Four Noble Truths clearly. And this refers to seeing conditionality. And if you remember me talking about conditionality at other times, conditionality basically refers to dependent arising. And I won't give a big talk about dependent arising now, except to repeat what I've said about dependent arising, what's commonly stated about dependent arising as that when there is this, that is. With the arising of this, that arises. When this ceases, that also ceases. With the cessation of this, that ceases. So when we are able to see clearly with insight that specific actions may lead to specific consequences, then we may be more willing to act in specific ways that produce less suffering. The Pali term for insight is vipassana. And literally this translates as, the V of vipassana translates as separate, intense, or distinct. And the passana refers to seeing. So what we're doing with vipassana is seeing clearly, seeing distinctly, seeing separately things as they are. And in resonance with this meaning, Daniel Goleman, writes that insight can refer to the clear perception of the object as it really is. Insight generally counters ignorance, and it is a key factor in being able to bring an end to dukkha. Because with insight, we see the way things are. We're not going to be deceived by the illusions of things. We don't act out of our delusions, basically. We don't act out of our wrong views. So, insight is the realization of the four truths. And not four truths, I'll remind you what these are. These are that life is not life is, but there is dukkha. There is unsatisfactoriness. That there is a cause for unsatisfactoriness or an origin of unsatisfactoriness, which is greed, ignorance, and hatred, actually. There is freedom. There is the possibility of freedom from dukkha, complete freedom. And there is a path leading to freedom. So insight is the realization of these four truths. And it is knowing at an experiential level three universal characteristics of existence. So these universal characteristics of existence are also called the three marks of existence. And they are anicca, which refers to impermanence or change, dukkha, which refers to discontent, unreliability, ambiguity, uncertainty, unsatisfactoriness, and sometimes just plain old suffering. And in this case, dukkha, the dukkha nature of things, refers to how conditioned phenomena, things that are impermanent, like my cup of tea down here, even though it's given me some momentary gratification when I drink it, momentary gratification, it's not going to give me enduring happiness. So this is the nature of things. Things that are impermanent, things that are conditioned, can give us some sort of happiness, but in the long run, because they change, they can't, the happiness isn't enduring. And the other universal characteristic of existence is anatta. Anatta literally refers to not self. And other ways we can understand it is as interdependence or insubstantiality, contingency, and another way of understanding it is emptiness. Sometimes the term emptiness, well, in Theravada Buddhism anyway, emptiness and anatta generally refer to the same thing, although anatta specifically refers to not self nature of things. And emptiness refers to, well, the not self nature of people, actually. Anatta generally refers to that. And emptiness refers to the empty nature of things. Now, what do I mean by that? There's a lot of different ways we can understand emptiness. One way is that it's empty. Something is, a perception of something is empty of another perception. But yet another way is to understand that nothing arises by itself. That things are empty of things are processes are empty of things. So in Pali, coming back to this anatta, anatta being the third characteristic of existence. In Pali, atta refers to self and anatta refers to not self. Here, self refers to the incorrect view that things are independently arising, independently self-arising. That is, that phenomena are independent from causes and conditions, that things arise in and of themselves, which is, of course, contrary to the way things actually are. As a characteristic of existence, anatta describes that changing phenomena are interdependent on other processes for their coming to being, their existence. And the term emptiness is sometimes used to describe anatta, as I just mentioned. in that the processes, or what we call things, including me, you, my lovely cup of tea, and everything, is actually inherent, is empty of inherent existence. What does that mean? It means that it's interdependent. It's dependent on causes and conditions. I'm here talking to you because of a number of causes and conditions coming together, including the fact that I've got internet and I'm in front of a screen, I'm in front of a camera, and you're somewhere else, and all these conditions are coming together. It's not one thing. It's a confluence of processes of, as you've heard me say many times before, streams of dependently arising processes interacting. So, in Buddhism, another insight that reflects emptiness is called suchness, where things are just as they are, no more, no less. So I mentioned earlier that wrong view could include seeing as permanent conditions that are not permanent, seeing conditions as self that are not self, and seeing impermanent conditions as providing enduring happiness when they cannot. And this is the opposite to anicca dukkha anatta. It is the opposite to the realities of, or the nature of conditioned phenomena as impermanent, unsatisfactoriness, or unsatisfactory, and anatta. And right view could be considered the opposite of wrong view. So there's a discourse called right view, or samma ditti. Ditti refers to views, and samma refers to in harmony with the way things are. So there's a discourse called samma ditti given by Sariputta. And the sutta begins with saying, one with right view understands the differences between the wholesome and unwholesome. And it goes on to say, the expressions of greed, delusion, and hatred are at the roots of the unwholesome. And the opposites of this are adhering to ethical principles of non-harm, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion or wisdom, which includes the precepts, and understanding that these are the wholesome. So in the Anguttara Nikaya Sutta, number 1, of Sammaditthi, it is said, and this is the Buddha saying this, I see no other single Dhamma, and a Dhamma here refers to a unit of experience. I see no other single Dhamma that is such a cause for the arising of wholesome Dhammas that have not yet arisen, or for the growth of and maturation of those that have already arisen, as right view. This is the one single Dhamma that is of, he sees no other single Dhamma such as a cause for the arising of wholesome Dhammas that have not yet arisen, or for the growth of and maturation of those that have already risen, as right view. I'll mention a bit later, I'll repeat this in a little while. This Eightfold Path is depicted as a cycle, as a wheel. And when you have one factor in line, all the rest follow. So if you can have in line right view, in line with the way things actually are, then all the other factors fall into place following that. And as we go around in a circle, right view at the beginning culminates in right view at the end, if that makes sense. So you could have a right view, that it's a right view that actions have consequences. and therefore you act in a way that's wholesome, and you follow through with your intentions to act wholesomely, and you act wholesomely with your ethics, and you have the composure to meditate, and as a result, that insight is you develop the insight into the nature of things, and that leads on to further moving in this further rolling of this wheel of Dharma, further rolling of this eight-spoked wheel towards enlightenment. So, according to Achan Jayasaro, Luang Por Cha said, right view. I'm just quoting something out of this book on, actually it's on page 595. So it's a big, thick book. It's right down here somewhere. I won't read it from the book, but I'll read it from what I've put in my text here. Luang Por Cha said, right view is, he said, like a cool place unreached by the burning sun. It is our true refuge. Our refuge, and he goes on to say, our refuge is in the mind that possesses right view. See into the heart of things. Make your view straight and correct. Then wrong views will be unable to enter into your mind and mingle with it. That is the meaning of refuge. And he goes on to say, suffering arises when there is an incorrect understanding of the way things are. Therefore, Luang Por Cha would emphasize establishing right view was the first step to the transcendence of suffering. And he went on to say, if your views of things are correct, it is sammaditthi, then nothing can go awry. That is to say, when your way of looking at things is in accord with the true nature of things, then you experience nothing as an obstruction. Your mind remains calm and contented, and problems are resolved. Then later, he said that people with wrong view had a false kind of contentment, similar to the ease of someone who doesn't realize they've dropped a valuable possession. Right view gives that same kind of inner ease as that experienced by somebody who remembered the exact location of a lost valuable and knew how he, she, or they were going to retrieve it. Though the object was not in his possession, his mind was at ease. On another occasion, he compared right view to the key that opened the door to Dharma. Without that key, there is no way in. So it's really, really important. And I think in what Achan Chah is saying, he's talking about it being a way for us to live with freedom in our heart. And I've noticed that when we are challenged and confronted with making decisions about what directions to take in our life, right view can be a beautiful refuge, a liberating refuge. We can remain stable and powerfully centered and confident with our ethical stance. And it will maintain a powerful sense of equanimity. It is our way of remaining with one foot in a perspective that's free from the entanglement of in the thicket of wrong views, in the madness of the world. I was talking to someone yesterday, and it was really wonderful to hear what this person was saying. I was talking about right view and how right view leads for us to maintain powerful ethics. It helps us maintain an ethical stance. And this person said to me, you could have your guns people pointing your guns at you, and if you maintain right view, this understanding that of confidence in your ethical integrity, then that's a way to find calm and peace. And I thought, wow, that's so true. It's so true. For me, I'm thinking about, the reasons why I was giving this talk, and it's because I'm watching the news sometimes, unfortunately. Um, and even if you don't watch your news, you can't be ignorant to everything that's going on in the world. It's so mad at the moment. There's so much conflict. Um, Sometimes it's difficult to know what stand to take, what stance to take. And do we protest against violence with violence, for example? Do we do we blame one side as worse than the other? What do we do? What stance do we take? And I feel that if we can take a stance of right view, the understanding of karma, for example, and the understanding of how everything is impermanent, not self, and uh, subject to not subject to enduring happiness, we can have some peace and we can have some equanimity. Um, because I think that wars develop because of views. Uh, Conflict develops because of views, clinging to views. Anyway, I think it's a really powerful way for us to walk a path of peace in a conflictual world. And we use it every day. Like when someone challenges us with um, some uh, some invitation to criticize another person for senselessly, or an invitation to gossip and slander, or whatever that is in life. If we can maintain our precepts, maintain our ethical stance, which is grounded in right view, then we can maintain a sense of peace. And that becomes our refuge. So a few months ago, I was talking with a meditation mentor friend of mine, whose name is Malcolm as well. Um, and I was talking about the state of the world and my worries and concerns, because sometimes I think about the state of the world and my heart is heavy. My heart is heavy with the suffering that's around, and how much some humans can harm another and try to eliminate the other. It seems like there's a complete loss of the capacity to see common humanity in another being, which is so it's really it really gives me a heavy heart. Anyway, I was talking about this, and he commented, "Yes, yes, there's a lot of suffering in samsara, isn't there?" And I thought, Of course, this is just samsara. This is samsara. The wheels of birth, aging, sickness, and death, going round and around and around and around, driven by greed, ignorance, and hatred. We kind of stay in this birth and rebirth and death and so on, of this wheel of suffering. And it's not just in our 21st century, it's been going on for eons. As long as, and I don't know I'm not sure how long we humans have been on the planet. I can't remember the exact amount of years, but for as long as we've had the capacity to hit another person on the head with a stick, there's been wrong views. And that's samsara, and that samsara has been maintained by greed, ignorance, and hatred, which fuel wrong views. So it's possible to find some peace despite all this chaos in the world. And I'm not disregarding the necessity to protect our kin, our communities, and our nations. And it's a difficult dilemma. If someone was threatening the life of my grandchildren, for example, I ask myself, what would I do? And I'm pretty sure I'd probably access my natural and evolutionary given capacities to defend my kin and my tribe by whatever means is possible. Who knows what that could be? Fortunately, I haven't been in that situation, but I can't criticize people going to war or defending their country, because I don't know what I would do. But still, the point I'm making is that samsara has been here since beginningless time. And as long as there is greed, ignorance, and hatred, there will be suffering. And when we can see the cycles of samsara in our hearts, we can choose to act or let go of in ways that can liberate us from these cycles. So in the Eightfold Path, right view is followed by right intentions, which include good intentions of goodwill, harmlessness, and letting go. And this underscores the importance of when we have right view, we also naturally act with benevolence and compassion towards ourselves and whatever beings there are, the other. So coming back to the Sammaditthi Sutta, the sutra on right view that I mentioned earlier, after Sariputta mentions the wholesome and unwholesome, he goes on to say that right view involves the understanding of the Four Truths: dukkha, its origins, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. And the discourse further goes on to describe the 12 links sequence of dependent arising. And I won't go through the 12 links right now. And how, but it is basically, 12 links basically breaks up that when there is this, that is, when this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. An example of a link independent arising is when there is feelings like the hedonic tones of experience as pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, that can lead on to craving. So feelings leads on to craving. There's a link to craving. If it's pleasant, we crave after it. We crave to grasp after it. If it's unpleasant, we crave to push it away. So craving follows on from as a link from feelings, and then from craving, there's a link to grasping and clinging. From clinging, there's a link to becoming. What I'm saying here is that if we stopped craving, if at that link we could see feelings just as feelings that didn't need to lead us into craving after the pleasant or craving to push away the unpleasant, then that would stop that cycling in samsara. It would stop that cycling, those cycles of suffering. So with the ceasing of that, this also ceases. And right view therefore sees emptiness and streams of dependently arising processes and interaction, as I mentioned earlier. Right view does not thingify processes. Right view not only includes seeing impermanence, dukkha, and not self, and emptiness, and conditionality, but also other profound realizations and insights, such as Atmayata. Now, Atmayata is a Pali term, and it's called by the late Venerable Buddhadasa as the final sword of wisdom, the final divorce from the deluded sense of I and mine. That's according to Pasano and Amaro in their wonderful text called The Island. So when you break that word down, Atmayata, it translates as the state of not being made up by, or made up from that thing or condition. And the meaning comes clearer when you understand what the term for maya is for. And maya is often a synonym for sankhara. And sankhara means to concoct, compound, or condition. So atamayata is unconcoctability, a state of mind independent of the objects and the conditions of experience. Fully conscious and aware, this mind is not affected by the defilements of greed, anger, and hatred. So in other words, this final sword highlights how we can see the mentally constructed nature of the self and the world around us, which is the perspective of those who wake up. And I'll just clarify this a little bit more. unconcoctability, the insight into unconcoctability, means that we see into the way we put things together, the way we construct things. And we construct a self, we construct a world, and we sort of get caught up in it. We believe it. Like I'm sitting here and talking to you. Look, we need to construct worlds to function in the world. There's no doubt about that. But if we can see those very constructions, that very making up of the worlds and being caught in these cycles of samsara actually produce suffering, we have the opportunity to stop it. We have the opportunity to step off the cycles of samsara. And if you're thinking about those, the 12 links, for example, we have the opportunity when feelings arise to be mindful of feelings as feelings, regardless of whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, and not necessarily let them lead into craving. We can short circuit it. We can exit the cycle of suffering. On Thursday, I was driving to a workshop in Ballina, which is probably about 40 minutes drive from where I am. Anyway, I was driving to the workshop and I put on the news and I was just listening to the news and I was, oh God. And I thought, I don't have to listen to this. I mean, it's the same stuff. It's just samsara. Blah, 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 blah. You know, so-and-so's killed somebody and, you know, somebody else is having this view and so on. And what I did, I just decided to turn it off. Just decided to turn it off. And rather, I just listened to the sounds of silence. It was really, and the sound of my car and the wind and all the rest of it. And I thought that this is kind of an analogy to waking up in some respects, because the possibility of waking up is always here. It's always now. There is the possibility of turning off the cycle in suffering right now. We can always, it's possible, sorry, I won't say always, it is possible to listen to the silence behind our incessant chatter. You know how we blah, 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 blah to ourselves all day? I know that it's difficult to turn it off, but it is possible to calm it down by just not engaging in it, by recognizing it and saying, well, okay, that's happening, but I'm choosing to attend to something else. I'm choosing to attend to the spaces in the sound. I'm choosing to attend to a perspective that's free. I'm choosing to attend to the experience prior to all that conceptualization, prior to all that construction. I can be free right now. So a freedom that's beyond mental fabrications and the creations of the self. Usually we create the self as the middle of the universe, by the way. I think everyone realizes that. And when we can begin to stop and see and hear and smell and taste and perceive clearly the reality of now, we begin to wake up to the reality of just this, just now. And this is really, really, truly peaceful. It is genuine happiness, sublime happiness. So, so we can also consider right view as including liberating insight. To see into the nature of self as being illusionary is liberating. And as the first factor of the path, when it is in line with the reality of the way things are, every other factor falls into place. So you have that first factor in line with the reality of the way things are, and the second factor, the third factor, the fourth factor, the fifth factor, the sixth factor, right effort, seventh factor, right mindfulness, the eighth factor, right concentration. And together it accumulates in this awakening. So right view at the beginning sets in motion right view as a liberating insight at the completion of awakening, at the completion of the path, which is ongoing, which is a kind of, it's a cyclic, ongoing, rolling towards liberation. So not only can right view provide a point of stability in the ways we respond to the madness and the violence and the conflict in the world, but it is also the first and final steps of the path to complete awakening and stepping off the wheel of samsara. So thank you for listening. And may we all be free from the thicket of views, a wilderness of views, a contortion of views, a writhing of views, and the fetter of views. Thanks very much. Let's all have a few moments in silence.